Well, hey, North Park Community Church. Pastor Luke here with another episode of First Looks. And we are continuing on in our doctrinal series through the month of August as we couple this series that gets after why we exist and who we are. And it's just kind of a series that reminds us of God's call upon us as the church. And we try to couple that with just all the things that we'll be sharing at our unified meetings. And we're on week 3 of this doctrinal series. Week 1 was why we train. And that was from Ephesians 4. We train to build up the church for the unity of the body, to equip the saints for the work of ministry, each doing what each has been called to. Then last week we looked at why we serve, and we were in 1 Corinthians 12 and 13, much more time given to chapter 13 to see that our service and our contribution for the common good of the body of Christ flows from an outpouring of love from us to our brothers and sisters around us, and that's love that has first come through Christ. And now here in week 3, we're talking about why, I don't know if I'm going to call this why we give or why we tithe. Now, if you know anything about what the word tithe literally means, then you might be intrigued why I would choose to call this passage why we tithe, because the word tithe doesn't show up here, and interestingly, the concept of tithing, with the word tithe, which literally means a tenth, 10%, a tenth, tithe, it really doesn't show up in the New Testament. Jesus mentions it in Matthew 23 when he's rebuking the Pharisees, and he says, "You tithe, from your dill, mint, and cumin, and this you ought to have done without neglecting the more important things of justice and mercy and righteousness." So that's kind of your spot to talk about the tithe proper, from the New Testament. And so that leads to some very curious implications. And so I might still keep the why we tithe, because we do still call our offering to the church a tithe. But I might do it just for the intrigue, I suppose. But it's ultimately going to be tithe is ultimately tied to giving and generosity, and that is certainly within our passage here. We have 2 chapters to look at today. Again, another big chunk, so I'm going to kind of fly through it a little bit more quickly, just to kind of give us an overview of this passage, to familiarize us with it, because I don't know what portions I'm actually going to take for the sermon on Sunday, and I might have to breeze over some parts and just kind of give a summary of what's talked about, so that I can press into other parts of the passage. And so with that, just not quite sure how I'm going to map this all out, because it is a lot of content, but it all flows together. It's all one argument. It's all one flowing discourse from Paul on this topic. And so let's go ahead and peek at it. Okay, so this is Paul and his companions here. We want you to know, brothers, right here. This is the church in Corinth. This is, I don't know if I said this or not, but this is 2 Corinthians 2, excuse me, not 2, 8 and 9. So Paul is writing to the church in Corinth, and he's writing, he wants to talk to them about what? This is really important. I want you to know, brothers, about the grace of God that has been given among the churches of Macedonia. Now, he's going to say some other things here about this, but this word actually shows up This is the Greek charis right there. And charis can mean a gift. It can mean forgiveness. It can mean grace as we think of it, favor. So it's a little bit of a multifaceted word in that regard. And he goes on to say, I want you to know about the grace of God that's been given among the churches in Macedonia. Grace is going to be one of the primary themes that runs throughout this. Now, this is the grace given among the churches of Macedonia. Let's talk a little bit about them. Paul tells us some stuff, and so this is Greek, and they are Gentiles, so non-Jews. Here's some stuff about them. A severe test of affliction. In a severe test of affliction. So Macedonian church is afflicted. Is one. Afflicted. 2. They're in extreme poverty. And then they are have an abundance of joy. Now, typically, affliction plus poverty does not equal abundant joy. This is only in God's economy of things does affliction and poverty equal abundant joy, or result in, maybe would be, it's not even that these two things combined are what is bringing the joy, is that they have a joy that isn't taken away in the midst of very difficult and trying circumstances. And he goes on to say more about it. Their abundance of joy and their extreme poverty have overflowed in a wealth of generosity on their part. Now, just want you to catch this here. They have, let me change it to a different color in green. They have extreme poverty, which resulted in a wealth of generosity. Now, there's a little bit of a wordplay that's happening there that we should certainly take note of. If they have extreme poverty, can they give a tremendous amount of wealth? Well, no. That's exactly what poverty means, is that you don't have excess wealth. You've got you've got what it takes to feed yourself and your family. Maybe that's extreme poverty. And yet, with their poverty, with their lack, they maintained generous hearts that was considered a wealth. And so this just makes me think of the widow's mite. Where poverty plus generosity equals wealth. Again, God's economy. It's different. And this should not be taken to in any way to be thought of as some sort of prosperity gospel stuff, because here's the thing: the wealth is it's a wealth of generosity. It's not a wealth of money that's given. It's a wealth of generosity. See, the thing is that God owns everything. God has no lack. All is at his disposal, and in his sovereignty, he can orchestrate all things to meet the needs of his people. And so when generosity is given, even when there's a lack or an extreme poverty, it is a beautiful thing, and it is considered more than the abundance of those who give from their riches when the percentage is relatively low for the rich. And so that's what we have going on here. For they gave according to their means. There it is. They gave what they could. Their wealth was, they gave according to their means, what they could. And I can testify beyond their means, not just according to their means, but they gave to the point that it hurt. Gave to point of legit sacrifice. It hurt. Now, notice this here. It was all of their own accord, by begging earnestly for the favor for the grace of taking part in the relief of the saints. They want to help out their brothers. Now, the relief of the saints, we'll see it a little bit further down. This is the church in Jerusalem was suffering severe famine. So what was happening is Paul was going around to all the Gentile churches that he had planted and asking them for help, a contribution, a financial donation to contribute to the church in Jerusalem that was suffering during the famine. And he says, this was not as we expected, but they gave themselves first to the Lord, and then by the will of God to us. First to the Lord, then to us. Not to themselves. This is love and grace. Accordingly, we urge Titus that as he had started, that he should complete among you this act of grace. So now he's talking to the church in Corinth. We sent Titus to Corinth so he could complete among you this act of grace, but as you excel in everything, in faith and speech and knowledge, in all earnestness and in our love for you, see that you excel in this act of grace also. Now this is interesting. Corinth excels in gifting, but they must follow through on sacrificial generosity to prove their love. That's what he's gonna get into this next part. He says, I say this not as a command. This has to be generosity can't flow from compulsion. But to prove by earnestness of others that your love is genuine. So right there. That prove the genuineness of their love by their willingness to sacrifice and their generosity to help out their brothers. For you know the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, that though he was rich, yet for your sake he became poor. This is the gospel, that Christ, we would look at maybe Philippians 2, 1 through 8. This is Jesus gave up his riches of heaven. Riches of heaven, we could say. And took on poverty of earth so that we could have eternal riches in him. So he takes the money metaphor and applies it to the work of Jesus on the cross, and he says this is where generosity flows from. That's why generosity is always a heart issue, and it's why it can't be legislated by the command. He says this has to come from a transformed heart that has recognized and embraced Christ and his gift, and from his incredible gift of grace and love. It's a no-brainer for us. It's second nature for us. It's of course for us that we give even to the point of our own sacrifice and hurt. He says, so that you by his poverty might become rich, and in this matter I give my judgment. This benefits you who a year ago started not only to do this work, but also had a desire to do it. They originally made a pledge to donate, but they didn't deliver. And so now, do it as well. So Paul says, deliver on your commitment. So that your readiness in desiring may be matched by your completing. Do what you profess, what you claim. Get actions behind it. For if this readiness is there, it is acceptable according to what a person has, not according to what he does not have. This is an important little bit here. This is according to what a person has, not according to what he does not have. For I do not mean that others should be eased and you burdened. Okay? This is ultimately getting after a working together for good of one another from gratitude of what God has given each. Okay. For I do not mean that others should be eased and you burdened. He's not saying I'm asking only for Corinth and nobody else needs to give anything. But it's a matter of fairness that your abundance, there it is, you have abundance at the present time, should supply their needs, so that their abundance may supply your need. It goes both ways. That there may be fairness, as it is written, whoever gathered much had nothing left over, and whoever gathered little had no lack. And this is from Exodus regarding manna. And then we get into this down here, but thanks be to God who put into the heart of Titus the same earnest care that I have for you. I'm going to breeze through this part here. I don't think I'm going to focus too much in it. I think I'm just going to summarize this part. For he not only accepted our appeal, but being himself very earnest, he is going to you of his own accord. With him, we are sending a brother who is famous among all the churches for his preaching of the gospel. Not only that, but he is appointed by the churches to travel with us as we carry out this act of grace. Let me just capture that, because we've been as being ministered by us for the glory of the Lord himself and to show our goodwill. We take this course so that no one should blame us about this generous gift. I don't know if that's the word charis or not, but I'm going to emphasize it and look into my Greek and double check, see if that's there. Is being administered by us, for we aim at what is honorable, not only in the Lord's sight, but also in the sight of man. This is important. Honorable in the Lord's sight and the sight of man. Paul is saying this. We are showing integrity in all this. They're above board on it. And with them, we are sending our brother with whom we have often tested and found earnest in many matters, but who is now more earnest than ever because of his great confidence in you. As for Titus, he is a partner, fellow worker for your benefit. And as for our brothers, they are messengers of the churches and the glory of Christ. So give proof before the churches of your love and of our boasting about you to these matters. So now we enter into chapter 9 here. Now it is superfluous for me to write to you about the ministry for the saints, for I know your readiness. Paul has confidence that they'll deliver, of which I boast about to the people of Macedonia, saying that Achaia has been ready since last year, and your zeal has stirred up most of them. But I am sending the brothers so that your boasting about you may not prove empty in this matter, so that you may be ready, as I said you would be. Otherwise, if some Macedonians come with me and find that you are not ready, we would be humiliated, to say nothing of you for being so confident. So I thought it necessary to urge you, brothers, to go on ahead to you and arrange in advance for the gift that you promised. Arrange in advance for the gift that you have promised, so that it may be ready and willing, as a willing gift, not as an exaction. So what we have here, instructions to make gift ready. This is a heads up. And don't embarrass me, Paul says, because I've put my reputation on the line by saying that what you promised, you'll follow through with. The point is this. Always take note when he says the point is this, because what he's about to do is tell you the point. He says, whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly. Whoever sows bountifully, sows sparingly, reaps sparingly. Whoever sows bountifully will reap bountifully. Each one must give as he has decided in his heart. Not reluctantly, so important, or under compulsion. For God loves a cheerful giver. That's one that many of us are familiar with. And God is able to make all grace abound to you. Grace again. So that having all sufficiency in all things at all times, you may abound in every good work, as it is written, He has distributed freely, He has given to the poor, His righteousness endures forever. One thing that I just want to focus in on here is this idea up here. What do you sow? You sow seeds and you reap fruit. Okay, so you just kind of taking that to follow the analogy. You don't reap what you sow. Natalie, not exactly. Now, in another metaphor, we would say you reap what you sow, because it's saying that if you plant, pea seeds, you get peas in response. If you plant fig plants, you get figs. Okay, so in that sense, yes, like produces like if you're talking about fruit. But this is, when you put a seed in, you don't get a seed back. You get something that the seed has produced, something that the seed has become. And I think that's a more appropriate way to track with this metaphor. And so we sow generosity. We reap. What do we reap? Joy and the goodness and delight of serving others. We sow generosity, we give away, and we find that we've received joy in the process. And come down here. So look with me here. He who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food will supply and multiply your seed for sowing and increase the harvest of your righteousness. You will be enriched in every way, to be generous in every way, which through us will produce thanksgiving to God. So we reap joy, we reap thanksgiving to God. For the ministry of this service is not only supplying the needs for the saints, but is also overflowing in the many thanksgivings to God. By their approval of this service, they will glorify God because of your submission that comes from your confession of the gospel of Christ and the generosity of your contribution for them and all others, while they long for you and pray for you because of the surpassing grace of God upon you. And then thanks be to God for his inexpressible gift. What is his inexpressible gift? Jesus. And hope of salvation. And the point is, if you've received the gift of Jesus, then we should naturally be a generous people. It's what logically flows. And so to not be a generous person while professing to be a believer it's it's contradictory. It's contradictory. I was trying to look for a softer word, but that's what it is. Now, that doesn't mean that if you struggle with greed, that you're not saved and should doubt your salvation. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that to step into the fullness of who Christ calls you to be as a recipient of his grace and mercy is to be someone who steps into lavish, sacrificial generosity for the good of others as an outflowing of love and for the thanksgiving and praise and glory of God. That's how things work in God's economy. Whether you have much, like the church in Corinth, or whether you have little, like the church in Macedonia. The point isn't how much. The point is the condition of the heart that is willing to sacrifice and give for the good of others. That's the point. And so, are there implications here on this teaching about the tithe? Yes. I'm going to save that for the sermon. So come in on Sunday and I'll make those things connect for you. So thanks for bearing with me here as we walk through this. It's a lot of text, and I know that, so I appreciate you hanging to the end here. So I love you, church. Please pray for me as I prepare to preach this, and I'll see you in a couple days.